Welcome to the Limited Edition podcast. The Limited Edition is the destination retailer for artisan independent watchmaking. Off the beaten tracks and against any form of fashion, we are fascinated by the quirky independent watchmakers and showcase their stories with passion regularly. Today is no exception as we have a special guest. Armand Billard from Sartory Billard, the French watchmaker who has been glorifying the art of bespoke, attainable watchmaking, going from an idea to a fully fledged maker, serving hundreds of collectors around the world and responding to their demand for special dials, special materials and color schemes. This is the Limited Edition podcast and I am Pietro. Enjoy the show. Yes, and here we go. It's so good to be back. For those of you that have been familiar with the Limited Edition for a while, you know that personally I had a bit of a break over the last 2 months. I had a bit of a health scare. When you're nearly turning 50, I know that things can suddenly present themselves in spectacular fashion somehow. In my case, I was really, really lucky. Everything went well. So apart from missing the last 2 months of our common passion and showing my face and interacting with you, everything was taken care. And I'm now back also for these live streams that I've been really missing. I'm so happy to be back, to be able to have the possibility. It's a gift, really, that we can share with you some of the most amazing stories from the world of watchmaking, which is our passion and what we love to do at the Limited Edition, and I love to do in my private life. Today is really no exception, as I was explaining in the intro, because there is a friend ready to interact with you today. French watchmaker that came from really nothing a few years back before COVID. I actually met him the first time right in COVID time when I was traveling down on a road trip from England to Italy to see my family over there. I stopped exactly halfway to meet Armand Billard in his own workshop, the workshop at the time, because now he's moved to a different one, because I was really intrigued to discover the personality and the way of working of somebody that started as more of a designer, and he embraced watchmaking as a passion, and he decided to give a different spin on watchmaking to what was generally available at the time, focusing on not only bespoke, which has become now his identity, but also attainable timepieces. So we will delve into this. We will dig into the details of the story of Armand, and I'm going to introduce him to you now. And I want to also say thank you to Armand and all the watchmakers for being so close to me in the last few weeks. They were a bit difficult for me. You've been amazing, and you really helped me to come the other side, in great fashion. I think I feel absolutely fine now. So welcome, Armand. It's an absolute pleasure to have you live with us.
Hello, Pietro, and welcome back on behalf of everybody on the other side of the curtain of watchmaking. We've missed you a lot, so welcome back.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Armand. I was digging a little bit in our past. We first met. I have had many weeks to think about how precious the relationships that we have built across the years are in watchmaking, where for sure, it's a stereotype to say that it's a big family. But when you manage to create strong relationships, it always makes a difference. And it's been like that for us, no? Since when we met, I heard about your work because I was wearing a SB04 Horophile edition through our common friend, Amr. And he facilitated us to meet, and then we met live in France in those days. How keenly do you reflect about those days that for you were the inception, not the beginning?
That's a very good question. The fact is that so last year I had like a family dinner, and I had like a sentence that pretty much summarized my relation with memory and past. And I said, I have such a bad memory that I only remember tomorrow. And this is like everything that is past is it's important. It helps understand like everything that happening now, but I don't look back, never. So while you were making the introduction and saying that we met in the previous workshop, I think it was probably a year since I've ever think about this or ever thought about this place. So when you said this, I remember, and I have a flash of us taking photos of the watches in the corridor by the big window that was
Yes.
in the office corridor.
We were wearing masks, so we couldn't see each other's face actually fully in those days either.
No. So I remember this is important, but also I cannot remember how I could work in a room that was 16 square meter, and then the workshop was 16 square meter. But that was already like a step up from working from a basically living room / kitchen.
Exactly, because all your project was born from an idea, and you really literally step by step learned a new profession. And I remember 6 years ago when I met you, you were very proud of your space, little space you were working on with your oven. You had an oven, obviously. You were showing me how the titanium tiles were reacting to the temperature and how you could obtain different color schemes.
No, it's like it's the third workshop I'm in. So today it's much more convenient because this is in the family house. It's in the basement, so the family is living upstairs. It's a little bit bigger. It's like 40 square meter or something, 50, I don't know. So it's much more comfortable. It's a little bit bigger. I have obviously a little bit more machine, but at least this is not chaotic as it was in a very, very small workshop that I used to.
You don't depend on a landlord. You don't depend on anything.
Yes, and the place, I remember there was like these big windows in the workshop, and that made it like unbearable like 6 months of the year, because that was full facing south, and the temperature was crazy. In the summer, you would open the window, but you had like bees, wasps, and hornets getting into your workshop. I remember like being like scared to death, because like you're working on something and you're very, very precise. Full summer, the window is open, and then you hear like the hornet sound, which is like super loud, like, just like centimeters away, and you say, so now I have to.
So you definitely don't come from the posh side of the being in the industry and then setting free to create your own watch brand. Your story is very different, no? How did the idea come about? How did it happen in your head and in your heart that this is what you wanted to do?
It really precisely happened in 2004 when I saw for the first time Cartier Santos 100 in the very cliché Cartier boutique that was on the Champs-Élysées at the time. I did not know nothing about watches, like really absolutely nothing, but I just fell in love instantly with the design of this watch, so much that I bought the watch like a couple of weeks after. And that started it all, because I honestly, when I bought the watch, I didn't know anything about like mechanical, automatic, like that was like all mysterious. And then I dove a little bit into watches, and bought some pieces, but they were like very, very cheap, because I didn't have the money to afford like multiple high-end or expensive pieces at the time. I was pretty young. That is 25 years ago, so I was 25. So something like this. Yeah, around 25.
So we're the same. We're actually the same age, aren't we?
Yeah, 75.
I'm discovering 75. Yeah.
What is the month?
That.
Which month?
July.
September. So
I could tell you were younger.
That was like many decades ago. And so I bought like myself few watches, cheap watches but interesting, and then I was running my design agency, and I that was product design, mainly computers, phones and stuff like this in France, and I ramped it up until I had like 15 employees, something like this, and I wouldn't do any design anymore. I would do like, I don't know, human resource management, dealing with customers' invoices, blah, blah, blah. So design was out of my life, and that was very, very hard for me. So I was fortunate enough to meet like a bigger consultancy firm that just wanted to acquire the agency because we had some competency into digital design that was very, very new at the time. And I get the keys, basically. And I was 40, so that was exactly 10 years ago. And at the exact moment, by coincidence, with a friend of mine, Ludovic Sartory, at the time, we said, "Oh, we're going to make ourselves a nice watch for our 40th birthday because he's also from 75." And so we made the watch. I created the watch. I made the design, etc. At the same time, by coincidence, sold the design agency and said, "Wow, watch it's just like so great. I could make a living out of this." So I took the little bit of money and employment and stuff that came up with the package of selling this small agency, and just like went full into watchmaking and started doing horrible stuff, breaking a lot of pieces, quickly finding that my interest into watchmaking was about the dial design, about the aesthetics, and a little bit less about the movement. There is some watchmakers that, of course, attack the watchmaking industry by making the movement, making complication, and casing them the way they can. But I thought that for my personality, for my understanding of design and aesthetic considerations, the best for me was to get some people doing the movements, because anyway they will be always better than me. But me, like, working hard on the design and create watches that bring artistry, unique craftsmanship into the watches, and see this, and it's something like this.
And you managed to incorporate that on even the collection that was the entry line for you, the SB04, which is, if you allow me to say so, the one that put you on the map. Yes. Back in the day. You've always had this focus on creating and offering value. So not being shy with the amount of work you could present and the originality of the materials and the colors, to make sure that customer would walk out with a watch as bespoke as possible at a price that could be considered as good value. And as we see now, the new obviously SB04-E that you have recently launched, which is basically a revamp of the initial SB04 that made your fortune at the beginning. Can you tell us how this philosophy stayed and is staying with you since the times when you were playing with the oven to get the titanium dials react with the temperature?
So I'm still 100% dedicated to explore new materials and new aesthetics, mainly on the die side, as I said. So you have on the image, like the SB04-E. E stands for evolution. So SB04 because this is a central second watch, time display only, no date. And this one is like an evolution of everything since the SB04, 5, 6, 7, and now SB04-E. It means like how I play with the dials, how I play with the design of the hands, how I incorporated sapphire on the dials, because I'm using like very different natures of dial, it can be very difficult to put indexes or to put numbers on them directly. So with the SB04-E 5 or 6 years ago, I initiated to cut numbers and to cut indices in a metal plate and then add this to the dial. And then on the SB05, that was a higher model with the small second at 6, I created a sapphire disc on which will be stamped or pad printed, and also the applied markers would be. And this sapphire is floating above the dial, so it means for me it's the best way to create a watch that will have any kind of dial but I won't have any problem to show the indexes and to show the numbers. And the Y shapes also on the odd numbers. This is just a small hint to the Tower Eiffel, where, because I was raised and born in Paris. These kind of things. The logo at 6, which makes it much more discreet than the logo in the full middle of the dial. It's a lot of little things that now are better on this watch. Water resistance also with a bigger crown, so you can wind it like very easily, and it's a screwed down crown. The fluted bezel that was a signature on the SB04 range now comes on the back case because it helps me to gain like a solid millimeter of thickness. So the watch is just, depending on the open or closed case, bakes just like 9.9 or 10.1 millimeters. Adding a lot of lume in the hands, in the trackpad, for the gimmick and for the fun on the crown. And you talked about also price point. It's also depending on the material that I'm using. So here I'm always trying to put the best value on this, because I would use, for example, on this one, ruby's heart, so ruby stone in the middle of the dial and platinum coated dial on the outside with a sun brush and a fume. I'm never shy of using like a lot of things on the dials, so they're as beautiful as they can. And the one on the right with the orange strap has a tantalum dial that is hand textured by myself, and the outside is a tantalum dial also brushed and fumé. So my goal is to play with materials, play with crafts, play with finishing, play with metals, and makes the watches as beautiful as I can. I have like, I don't know how many IDs or stones or things I already have on my bench, but I have like a solid year of creation.
Could you briefly recap? Because I remember, of course, at the beginning you were testing materials, testing colors, and you got to a certain point with the initial SB04. Then by trial and error, you have moved on a long way to be able now to experiment. After you did with semi-precious stones, natural stones, and all sorts meteorites. Now you're moving into kind of the holy grail, such as tantalum, for example, that has been a material that is very, how can I say, inspirational for many collectors around the world. Is this SB04 slightly more, how can I say, structured in terms of the phases that you have to go through to work out on a dial and be effective with the scrap, for example, that you may have in the process? To do this, could you maybe recap what are the different phases that bring you to come out with such a dial as we see here, and why the dial can be considered as complicated sometimes as a mechanical movement?
Oh, that's a very good question. First of all, I'm still trying and breaking and making things. This morning I broke a very valuable piece of stone to make a dial with. Shit happens, but I was like,
sorry about that.
I lost like a solid €1,000 just in 1 second. And yesterday I worked dials with silicon wafers, and result is just insane, and there will be some very good pieces coming up. So I'm always attracted by the material, how I can use it and how I can embed this into a dial. I see the production of watches today. There is like incredible good value for money watches. It's a fantastic period to buy a €1,000 watch that will have a great design, even sometimes a small complication, things like this. But it takes a certain level of dedication to twist the materials, to twist the effects, to do something different, and to make it. For example, tantalum. So I was one of the first independent to make back in 2008 and some SB04 and then 5s and 6 blah blah out of tantalum cases. At the very time, you would find only a couple of Audemars Piguet in the time, Joux, but they were like all big brands. Like pretty much no independent would do tantalum, but I did. And so once after I did also a lot of titanium dies, I'm very happy to see that even 5 years after, nobody is apart. I'm going to salute my masters and inspiration there, de Bethune, and nobody is doing polished titanium dials, because this is just a fucking nightmare. I'm sorry. And I respect de Bethune so much for what they do, because I've been doing this like to a smaller level than them, but I did, and nobody is doing this, because this is just insane work. And so I didn't want to repeat myself. I've done like polished titanium dial, oxidized to many colors. I did guilloche dials of titanium also with color, and I know 2 other watchmakers that are able to do a guilloche titanium with a very pure color inside, and then not a color that is like changing and little dust points inside. And then I also experimented and did a lot of watches with silicon wafer. And funny enough, it seems that I'm, not to brag, but I'm always ahead of the curve, but very, very unknown, because I'm making so few watches per year. And then like making silicon wafer watch was probably the first time 4 years ago. And last year I saw a big brand doing something for an auction and saying, "Oh, we are the first to use silicon wafers on the die." I said, "No, you're not." And then so it's always about like experimenting, choosing something that is not used, see how it reacts, so I can work with that and do something. And tantalum, once again, like tantalum case, everybody is doing tantalum cases now. Okay, fine. Nobody is doing tantalum dies. I'm going to
Yeah.
make bloody tantalum dies.
Very, very, very clear. So you're looking at the artisan side still as a precondition for anything that you would come out with. So thinking that you have progressed into a more systematic way of producing is actually misleading, because you're still the artisan that you were at the beginning. It's just that you have to somehow make more watches, I guess, because now you are serving hundreds of, and I know it through the limited edition, we've been lucky with quite a few sales. We are serving with you hundreds of collectors around the world. So do you consider yourself a brand? Do you consider yourself a one-man band, solo artist? And where are you positioning yourself at the
No,
moment?
it's clearly a brand, because now I'm very, very fortunate to have retailers that can sell the pieces, and it's also something that is new from 2025 with the SB04-E, the Tantalum, the Ruby one, and all the models that will come after. Making a watch for me will be offered in 2 ranges. I've been serving only bespoke for the last 5 years, which was incredible. Like I made like 1,000 pieces, probably, around a solid 1,000 pieces only of bespoke watches, which is crazy, because like it means also 1,000 design sessions with the customer, 1,000 research on how I'm going to make it. Of course, somewhere more easy, but when you come with very, very specific demands, like, oh, I want to make a watch out this violin piece of wood that was restored from something that my father gave. It's just, I just have zero idea how I'm going to make this watch. But they gave me the piece, and I'm working. I'm trying.
So true story.
Yeah, it's a true story. I have in the safe here, like the rest of the violin back with one hole cut for the dial, and I had just the place enough to make 2 dials. If you give me 1 second, I grab it. Or I have this customer from America that is having a very, very specific company that they're doing computer security, and to make securities, they are doing their silicon wafers with chips on side, and he's sending me a piece, like even like barely an email, say, "Oh, I'm sending you something, Armand," and I have like this big chunk of silicon wafer, and it takes like me months to say, "Oh, what can we do? It's very thick. How I'm going?" So and like sometimes it's just things like this silicon wafer I'm looking. I have 1 piece here on my wall. My dials can be maximum 0.7 millimeter thick because of the hands and the stacking, etc. And the silicon wafer was 1.1, something like this. And you say, like, how am I going to grind down pure silicon from 1.1 to 0.8? And it is
which machine exactly I'm going to use.
yes, which machine, which process, and which like zero failure I have, like, because I have like zero failure possibility. Actually, I broke one dial out of 16 of 15 that we make. I broke one.
Yeah.
But
Well,
like
in terms of the violin, for example, yeah, I mean, ruining the raw material would be disaster, no? As
that,
you're
that
making
would
the
be
dial,
done.
because
That
it's
is the
meaningful.
small part that would be impolite to me to wake up, stand up. I mean, but if you're changing the mess, I will get. So this piece of wood is like 10 centimeter, or not even, like small like this, and I do have like only two chances to make the dial and to send it to thing. That was the most, like, I was a little bit afraid because of the history of this violin part. To make it, that was not the hardest part, because it was already very thin and I could cut it very, very nicely. But sometimes I'm facing very much very different challenges. And when I wanted to do some tantalum dies, because nobody is doing tantalum dies, and I'm sure, like, take my word on it, wait a year and look how many tantalum dies you'll see outside. It will be funny, because now I'm laughing at this. I said, like,
Yeah, so you really enjoy this pioneering position of
it's cool.
having gone through working with literally any material. You just like the challenge and you like to bring it to life and see what happens.
This is just how I'm wired, because it's very much enjoyable, and I'm very lucky to find customers through the network of retailers that understand the thing and say there is a good value for money. Of course, the watches, they don't come cheap. Like, I'm not competing on the lower price point. This is not my goal to do watches for 1,000 euro and work like Amazon, pushing car box all day long to make a living. So I'm taking my time. I'm making watches with great care. Sapphire disc, sapphire on the dial. Also, you see more and more watches with sapphire rings with the indexes on this. I take this like as a small, I don't know, compliment or something. I'm just doing something different. But the first one was SB05, like, 4 years ago, something like this.
Because you've always been doing it with your hands from the beginning. You've been through everything, so you have a level of knowledge of how materials behave and react that is second to none. So you have this ability to just push yourself into some challenges that would have been considered maybe difficult. Even, sorry, Armand, even on the color schemes, because like in the intro that we just broadcasted, we've shown the SB04 Lagoon that we did together as a limited edition of 10. This color is something that when you showed it to me, I was really impressed for its originality. So how this, for example, came about?
So this blue color is a very different blue color than the one is famously known through this Tiffany brand, not to name it, but Tiffany.
Never heard of them.
You'd never heard of them, which is very, very funny, because they have their own Pantone color, which is a very specific color that you can only produce if you're a subcontractor of Tiffany. So it's very, very strictly patented and registered, and you don't want
regulated.
Yeah, it's incredible, but it doesn't mean that the Lagoon color cannot be worked on. And I'm fortunate enough to work with painters that do very much understand the play of light and the quality of the color. And applying color on something is not about like just spraying something. Is how the dial is built. Like, you have this very deep hammered dial in the center. You have the circular brush on the other side. Once again, you have the sapphire disc on top with the indices, and it's a match of everything. And to note that, as you said a little bit earlier, I am with my hands every day on the bench trying some stuff and breaking some stuff and doing crap. I have a graveyard of crappy projects. But sometimes something is good, and then you find a good color, you find a good texture, you find a good dial, and you have something that is
Imagine one day you could create something like our friends at Arcanaut with their 4-dyed, which is obviously a great invention that comes from a scrap varnish in the car industry.
Really absolutely love what James is doing at Arcanaut, and this is exactly the same kind of research
philosophy.
Into they released like a few days ago a watch that has coffee color on the dial, and it's because they're just thinking a little bit out of the box but making nice things. It's not about like taking any kind of very bad stuff and shoving it into a dial. There is like it's not this. It's just like what
it shows sorry.
No, what can be done and aesthetically pleasing, and also giving a good voice to the craftsman that is making it. I'm always, talking about who is making or who is supplying the stuff.
It's really showing control of the elements that comes from the experience of going through years and years of experimentation, which is definitely something that James has been pioneering on his side for sure as well. What did you do on this central piece of the dial? Can you spend 2 words on that? If we go back
on the SB07?
SB07, the center piece, how you worked out this pattern seamlessly. It looks a bit like waves, that's why we weren't sure whether we were going to call it Côte d'Azur.
No, it's perfect. It's Côte d'Azur. It's like it's waves. It's directly inspired from the, I don't know the word in English, clapotis. It's like all the little small, very small waves that you have on top of the water when it's moving a little bit fast.
It'd be like the reap when ripples, you observe reaps.
And so this is a stamped piece. It is not for this level of depth and shape and everything. It's not done by hand. It's a stamping tool doing this. But there you have always the different methods to do stamping tools. You can take a very basic texture and say, oh, I want like heavy grain of sand, and do whatever you want. Or you can, like I did, contact a designer that I know for 20 years that is very good in CGI. Ask him to make a CGI creation of water from this. So it's a flat image, so it's like a movie, CGI computer stuff like that would simulate water for a movie, and then we take it, transform it in 3D file, and then this 3D file is transformed and with a CNC into a stamping tool, and it's made. The result is doing this.
Yeah, and it looks very original, and with the Joux-Perret caliber as well at the back. We were very proud to be able to launch this piece, and sometimes we forget, but we also, we do sell watches at the limited edition, and this piece, it was a 10 pieces limited edition. We still have 1, maybe 2 available, just in case. You find all the details on the website, of course. You never stop with the experimentations, and I was really impressed with your Maki concept. We were lucky enough to be involved with that as well. Maki was an amazing collaboration with a Japanese artist that did exactly what with you or for you, Armand.
So the Japanese artist is called Tatsuya Todo. It's a 76 years old gentleman that is living, like a movie by the village, and like working alone in his workshop with his spouse, and he's one of the master person in Japan for maki-e, or it's called maki-e or raden. So this is the art of cutting very, very small pieces of mother of pearl, choose them by the color of the reflection, organize them on a pattern of urushi lacquer, which is a black lacquer from Japan. And so you put you take a dial, you put some layer of lacquer, you embed like these little pieces of mother of pearl, you polish everything, you put a second layer of lacquer, and blah blah blah, rinse and repeat.
You're describing it like if it was easy.
No, it's not.
I'm blown away. I
have some pictures of the guy, and he's working without loop, like just half standing, sitting in this very Japanese position. I mean, they're very comfortable with that. I couldn't stand it for 5 minutes, but whatever. So he's just having like this little place of wood, the dial, and just putting like the little pieces of mother of pearl like this, and you controlling at that time that the small pieces that you're putting is in a gradient color that is good and it's looking nice, and blah, blah, blah. It takes like,
and they're like embedded in a sapphire. Silly question.
Under the sapphire, on the
under the
outside,
sapphire.
is aventurine stone.
Yeah, the aventurine creates that contrast that is absolutely
Yeah.
beautiful.
You see the numbers that they are printed on the sapphire disc, like all the creations of Sartory Billard. So it's floating above it's almost a millimeter away from the dial. So you have these depths filling.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. There were a couple of editions of the Maki. We were lucky enough to be able to launch with you the one with the green inlays, which is sold out now except for one piece. Once again, if you go on the limited edition, there is a full Sartory Billard listing. You will find a Maki with a full review from our resident editor as well, Johnny McElleron, that has been having fun in obviously creating all the descriptions and the reviews of these amazing pieces. And tell me, Armand, I can't believe how the time has flown by. I always say this, but I really mean it. 37 minutes we started. I needed to ask you a question because you said I started as a pioneer in experimenting with materials. You're fascinated with because of your design background, but of course you have developed a taste also with the beauty of mechanics, because we have collaborated with some of the big heads, big powerhouses, some bigger suppliers, some smaller ones, Joux-Perret we just mentioned, and you kind of toyed with the idea of also experimenting with complicated pieces. We've seen in the listing of Sartory Billard, you will find also tourbillon these days,
Yes.
which is something that was unexpected. How did you have the urge of adding this? I would say this new world into your watchmaking.
I've been asked to do it 3 years ago, something like this, by a group of collectors that approached me and saying, we're looking to have a Sartory Billard watch with a tourbillon inside with the SB05 DNA. But basically, we don't want you to buy a tourbillon from a manufacturer. We want you to make a tourbillon. So imagine that you're working alone like me. You have good suppliers, but like working alone, and you have this group of collectors coming in and say, we're going to place 30 tourbillons for our group. That was like an immense leap of faith and trust from Chronotempus Group. So once again, thank you, Dario, and all the guys that belong to this group. If you're watching, that was
fantastic. They have my full respect
point for me.
Yeah. Shout out to Chronotempus. They are great people, and again, we've used the word pioneer many times, but this is one watch group that has been toying with watchmakers that no one would have heard about, and they have taken huge risks in terms of the aesthetics, the mechanics, and I always find it very inspirational every time they have a release. I think there was a Vulcan one recently.
Yes,
that was quite interesting as well. So you cherish the exchange, Armand. I know it. I ask you a question for the benefit of our listeners. We exchange all the time. We talk to each other. We bounce ideas. That's how you function very much.
Yes, this is how I function, and I also function on recommendation. Or it's I'm using this tribune that we are live to say, if you know like a craftsman, or if for your group through the limited edition, you want to make 10 pieces, just contact Pietro and say, we want to make like 10 pieces with a, I don't know, salvage Porsche from the 60s because we restore cars and we are 10 friends. Just contact Pietro and we'll organize like a bunch of incredible watches. Because if you have an idea, and I'm sure everybody has an idea, there is something on my side that is working in my head for quite a while, I do enjoy smoking some cigar from time to time. And you have a lot of different blends and leaves from different countries, and they do have very much different colors. And even if it is something that has been done previously, a couple of brands have been doing watches like this, I'm sure there is something that can be done with cigar amateur group. That makes so much sense.
Absolutely. Another idea would be, as soon as I smash a guitar on stage, we could use the remainders of it's dream of my life. That's the dream of my life. Smash a guitar on stage. Yeah, we'll see if that happens. Listen, Armand, it's been an absolute pleasure. I had a list of questions. I haven't asked half of them, but this leaves us the time and the space for doing this again very soon. If you are into Armand's work, you can find information on the limited edition or on, of course, the website sartorybillard.com, where they are very, very keen to hear from you and to exchange, as we said. There is a bunch of really, really good rare editions that are available at the moment, so it's a good opportunity but the market is quiet before the big kermesse at Geneva Watches and Wonders that is coming next. And but for now, Armand, I really thank you for your time, for your enthusiasm, and for your passion, and for your friendship.
Thank you very much, Pietro, for your friendship. Thank you for being back. So take great care, and we'll see in a month, 5 weeks. We'll see.
Absolutely. Thank you for this. If you have liked
before, Pietro, no, I say crap. We see before. I'm in London on the 19th.
Absolutely. Yeah, we should also mention that, actually. If you are in London, 19th of March, Sartory Billard and the limited edition are joining for an event to showcase, for the first time on our side in London, Armand's work live. So Armand will be there. We will create some video content, but most of all, you can meet the man himself. He's very tall, so don't get, when you see him, don't get scared. He's a bigger man than what you see now on the screen, but he's very sweet, and he's very accommodating by all means. So if you're interested in this and you're not on my WhatsApp community, which you are welcome to be if you just send a WhatsApp message through our website, you can also sign in on our website. There is a private area called My Collection. You can sign in there, and you can have the visibility of our next upcoming events. The first one being the one with Armand. I also then allow myself, to give you an appointment there and to see you in Geneva as well, Armand. And you take good care of yourself, and I'll see you very soon.
Thank you, Pietro. See you very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.